how does digital transformation take place? And I think while there is going to be a lot of discussion about technology, I hope that we will also have a discussion about the humans that are going to use the technology and probably form the greatest hurdle into making things happen on the ground. We have a plethora of experience from China, from Pakistan, from Michigan, and then of course from Kyrgyzstan as well. And we hope that with the sharing of experiences, we will start moving towards some possible solutions, some ideas. Most often what happens in a conference is that ideas are sparked that have nothing to do with what people are saying or what they meant to be, what they meant to say. And that is the whole point, that is the genius of the human mind in its ability to make connections and to jump around. And so we hope to have a stimulating discussion on that. I think I will start at the far corner, but also the closest neighbor to Kyrgyzstan, and also closest to Nuriia, because we are only 1.5 hour drive from the Chinese border. We have David Lee. He is based in Shenzhen and an expert in innovation. And at the very heart of the modern innovation world here, Shenzhen itself. Please, David.
Give me the back.
It's a great honor to be here. Very inspirational. I think Shenzhen is city built itself from a small fishing village to a major metropolitan, and right now arguably one of the global innovation hub in 40 years. And this huge digital transformation coming on two sides. One is I think a lot of these talks on digital transformation has forgotten all this digital, they run on something. They run on piece of hardware. And so the hardware side of the digital innovation is as important as the software side, and more importantly is as an economic. Hardware carries much more value than software for the economic development. So one thing is with this thinking about digital transformation is taking the hardware into account. And on the second side is who gets to participate. I think this type of digital transformation, we always talk about people with higher education or even advanced degree. But in reality if you look at the development of Shenzhen and as well as a lot of innovation ecosystem we study in China, it's actually coming from people off the street. Given the big platform of open cooperation, better solution comes from people who dealing with ordinary problem, rather than people with advanced degree trying to focus in on something very specific. So I think huge success of digital transformation is not just novelty, but real problem solving, and giving as many people the opportunity, as many people as possible to have opportunity to try this, not just as a user, but as a creators and as entrepreneurs.
What are one or two key steps that you may think were taken early on in that area that helped digital transformation take place in Shenzhen?
I think one thing, and actually my keynote is next, but I think one thing is to open this up as an economic opportunity, not as research, not as this huge 3-5 years implementation plan by large consulting firm, but really looking at where we are in terms of technology. Actually, most of the advanced technology, digital technology today, they are very open. So how do we deliver a message to everybody can do it, rather than out of the gate excluding most of people, saying, well, you have to go to the right university, get to the right incubator. And second is make sure the technology is to be the service of the entrepreneurs, not the other way around. Let's not try to make entrepreneur out of technologists. Let's try to make technologists to service the entrepreneurs.
I think that is a very important lesson about technology serving the people and actually being useful, and then it will happen. And also I think as you talk about it, going to the common man, and I think that's where perhaps the experience of Kyrgyzstan would become most useful. And we have Nuriia, who is the director of Tunduk, and perhaps she can share some of her experiences and also challenges.
This is the magic. Yeah, is it on? Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And replying to your question, I should say, well, I will talk in English. I should say that I think one and a half year ago, Tunduk was in a very on a very low level of implementation. And replying to your question, what is the state from how did it happen that we moved from the aspiration to actually implementing this digitalization? I should firstly say that I think that all countries in the world would like to digitalize their public services. All countries in the world are saying that digitalization is the most important thing right now. I have just returned from the United States, where I was on the training, where this digital economy, cybersecurity, AI, learning, machine learning is, the buzzwords. But what are the lessons learned from our almost 2 years experience of implementing digital things? I think I should list several of these lessons. First of all, the most important thing is the political support. Because if you do not have any political support, if you have small political support, then I think nothing is changed, and this digitalization will be only the buzzword. The second thing is that people, I think we have already heard today that people, the right people, I should say, the correct people in place. And in this regard, I should say that we are very fortunate to have such leadership of the state ICT committee first. In this regard, I should say we have great team, not only in our state enterprise, but also in other state ICT enterprises here. Everybody are very, and everybody is very interested to implement actually these digitalizations in all state and municipal bodies. And third thing is very important, education. And several speakers already mentioned this. Education is nothing, is everything. And without education, you cannot do anything. So we should more and more invest in education. And last but not least, I should say, I liked very much the word that today I think the speaker from the Korea mentioned, patience. We have heard many times when I think it was the international conference in Estonia, the Estonians said that if you, we tried to implement the system, our system in many countries, but many countries didn't pay much attention to the time factor, because if you do not have 7 years, during 7 or 10 years, the digitalization can actually be implemented. But political leaders in those countries, they said, no, we don't have time, we should do it like right now, like on 1 year, in 2 years. And with digitalization, this doesn't help. So we should understand that digitalization it's not the magic, only time and patience. I think this is the four factors that we should pay attention to. And I should also say that we always underline that digitalization is not the technology. Digitalization is the step of reforming actually the state administration. This is the state reform. This is only a tool in order to make this reform. This is not the thing in itself, digitalization. This is just a tool, we should understand it. Because otherwise, if you think that this is only the technical things to connect, through computers, connect several state bodies or business environment, then it's nothing. We should understand that re-engineering of business processes is very important. Changing mindset of people, this is also another important thing. I think I will stop here if you have any other questions.
Thank you very much. Now we will move to the experience of the healthcare industry. The Aga Khan University was established in Pakistan about 30 years ago. And 30 years ago, that university is what the University of Central Asia is today. A little tiny entity with very grand ambitions. Today, the Aga Khan University spans multiple continents, about 17,000 employees, multiple hospitals, degrees in education, nursing, and of course, every aspect of health education and postgraduate education. And managing the technological infrastructure is what Russel's responsibility is. So I think all aspects of AI in healthcare, to cybersecurity, to information security, to privacy is something that he works with. It would be great to hear about these ideas from him. Russel.
Thank you. As you said, Aga Khan operates in I think 6 countries. We're in Afghanistan, we're in Pakistan, we're in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, and up in the UK. So from a digital transformation perspective, we operate in some challenging environments. We operate in challenging political environments at times and economically challenging environments. I think if, I sort of sit back and look at the journey I've been on and watching the organisation, some of that challenge from the digital transformation comes down to people, having the right people, having people with the right skill sets. And I hear a lot about, we've talked about technology skill sets. I think there's another part to this, which is the soft skills, that ability to communicate, to work in a team, to be able to engage people. Those are key skills that are required by all of these people that we want to have play in this technology world. And I think if I go back to part of what David said, is this is not technology-led, it's a business-led. Where does the business or where does the government want to go? Because they set the vision. The technology pieces are just building blocks. When I think about the transformation that AKU is driving, we face, from a healthcare perspective, and from our universities, we are a research organisation. So we do major research on a clinical perspective. So we face challenges of data. Just how do we share data to do research? We're covering countries. We're not isolated to a single country dealing with the laws there. We're dealing with multiple countries. How do we provide information for people to do research against that? We face infrastructure issues. If you think about those places we're operating in, the infrastructure is not necessarily there. And one of the challenges I think about what we're trying to do, but also for Kyrgyzstan is, I come from a developed world country, Australia, if you're not quite sure of the accent. One of the challenges there, it's such a vast continent, is equity of service from a government perspective. And I listened this morning to the talk about the government services and the digitalisation. If you're heading down that journey, you need ubiquitous access for everybody, no matter where they are, whether they're in Bishkek, or in a tiny mountain village. Because if you want the government services to be delivered, they must have that access. And when I say equity, it's about the same price that you would pay if you were in a major city, because that enables the service to be delivered. So I go back to the people, and I think one of the interesting comments that was made at lunch is, but you've got to have people who can teach these students coming through. So it's having those skills and those people developed in this country. We face the same thing equally in the areas where we operate, is finding the key, professors, academics to lead the training of the doctors and nurses in the various disciplines, but equally in other disciplines that we're teaching, right? So where do we find those people who can teach and lead and mentor? And I think that's part of the challenge. I still come back to digital transformation is about change. It's fundamentally about change and how you do that. Technology is the easy piece. Getting people to move and shift their behaviour, the culture of the organisation to move is hard. That's where the soft skills are very important. And even at a country level, those are the skill sets which you need. The engagement to set the vision and then continue. This is not as we said, this is not a 1, 2, 3 year journey. You're on a 30-year journey. And I'll give an example. I look back at where Malaysia was in the late 1980s. And Prime Minister Mahathir, who was the Prime Minister at that point, set a vision 2020 for Malaysia to be a developed nation. Didn't define what it was, but said that's where we're going. And everything is really was evaluated against, is it taking us in that direction? And they're actually right there now. They're right on the edge to be a developed nation. But it was powerful enough. And I think that's from a Kyrgyzstan perspective, set that vision, keep evaluating against it, because you don't need to define the strategy. The vision is the key piece and keep taking you there. But that vision has to bring the people, because they're the fundamental building blocks. And it's not just the people who deliver, but it's the community. Kim, who was talking from the science technology part, it's fundamentally about getting a community and saying, this is what we're trying to do, and get them to buy into it, because that's where you build sustainability. And that's part of, I was listening earlier from the Aga Khan Development Network and what we do. It's about building sustainable communities to be able to do this and continue to do this for themselves and to regenerate.
Thank you. Well, from the healthcare perspective, I think we will move into education, and that also possibly one of the largest universities in the world. We saw that slide, a budget of $9 billion. I think that is getting close to the Kyrgyz government perspective in terms of size, and with only one core and critical responsibility, that of education. Well, also research, but research is integral to education. So I'd like Ravi to dwell on that most critical of ingredients, that is the people. How are we going to train them, and then possibly what role technology can be playing in that?
No, thank you again for the opportunity. I'm truly grateful to be with all of you. And I do want to point out that since you talked about healthcare, out of that $9 billion budget, a significant portion of that is in our healthcare. Because as you know, exactly, it's no kidding. And so, but that being said, I have the privilege to represent several thousand individuals who work in my organization. And one of our most interesting challenges is about people. As technology continues to evolve, what's happening is in this space and in most spaces, I like to talk in terms of the fact that there is no job security. In fact, we shouldn't expect job security. What you do have, however, is if you're willing to learn and evolve and change, you will always have career security. So I talk to my staff and colleagues and students and beyond in not thinking about job security, but thinking about career security. And the career security will only come from willing to learn over a period of time. It will also come from thinking in terms of really, at Michigan, we are talking about the concept of now extensible transcript, meaning it's not just about what you are getting an education when you're graduating from Michigan, but could we have a transcript where while you're at Michigan, maybe you took some classes on Coursera on your own, maybe you took some courses on lynda.com, maybe you took courses at Central Asia University, maybe you took something at work. How does it all connect? How does it all connect, and how does it make you who you are? And that's the idea of career security. And we have so many options to learn together and so many things we can do together. And so really, sky is even not the limit. We are only limited by our imagination when we are thinking about learning. And going back to my morning comment about human ingenuity, by nature, we are curious. We are curious. So as a leader, one of the things I ask myself is, how can I challenge that curiosity? How can I inspire that curiosity in people that I work with so that they can actually go out and learn and do things? We also must not forget the ingenuity of our students. I will give you an example. At my former institution, which was Brown University, when I had arrived, we had a situation where people were complaining about the wireless, that the wireless is not very good. And when I would ask my staff, they would say, oh, no, our wireless is great. And so there was somewhere miscommunication happening. What I found out was we had good wireless coverage, but it was not designed for capacity because they had not future-proofed it. So one possibility was we bring in some big company and have them do the survey, which they were very, very willing to do. That would have cost us upwards of $750,000 to do the survey of the institution across, to figure out where holes are in the access and coverage. So we took a different approach. I talked to the student body and I suggested to them that what I would like them to do is, as they're walking across campus, they should use their smartphones, download their favorite YouTube video, start walking across. Anywhere it stops downloading, tweet that, take a picture of that location and tweet it with geolocation coordinates. And I said, and everybody who tweets will respond in 30 minutes or less, and then I would buy them lunch. Long story short, only $700 later, we knew about every place where we had problems, which was great. More importantly, it was no longer an IT problem. It was no longer an IT design issue. Student owned that project. It became their project. So there was, suddenly they were inspired to help, they were inspired to participate, they were inspired to think about what wireless coverage means. So there are lots of different ways you can do these things and get people involved. One most recent example at Michigan we are implementing is leveraging data and also location. We have large cafeterias when you have 46,000 plus students and more. Cafeteria lines can be very long. And students sometimes then can't eat lunch because they will miss the next class, so they go on. So what we did was we connected their location with their class information. So on an opt-in basis, if, and I know your son is a student there, absolutely, exactly. Parents like their kids to eat. And so what we did is on an opt-in basis, a student can get push notifications, basically saying, hey, Joey, you just finished your class, your next class is in 1 hour, and on your way, here are 3 cafeterias and the wait times are, and it tells you the wait times. So you can make an informed decision. But notice I said opt-in because we wanted to be respectful of students' privacies. So privacy is a very important parameter. I mean, I'm all for using data, but also respecting privacy. So when you bring people and technologies and learning opportunities together, I think we can do some really exciting things in the world.
Thank you. Well, we've heard from our experts. I would like the audience to be getting warmed up. We would be opening up for questions shortly. But I would like to pose a challenge to our panel. It's all right to talk about patience and 10-year scenarios, but no matter what we do, we live in times with the political government which has a short time. So there have to be short wins. There has to be the easy wins. So are there some experiences that you have had that you look around and you say, here's an easy win, why don't we go ahead and do that? David or Russell, anybody? Easy wins.
Well, I guess my city is probably the best place to answer that question. We're not interested in anything we cannot make money off in 6 months. But yeah, I think there are a lot of easy wins, but this has to come in from inside, from people who are in the system. Today we talk about justice, talk about healthcare, education. All these things involve. There are a group of people excited about wanting to see change in their 30 and 40, and whether the institutional inertia is or the external factors is stopping them from making change. In the past, probably 2 years, we did a lot. We work with large organizations, receiving people from in their middle management who are mostly actually kind of interesting. We don't receive anyone from research and development. We're receiving people from accountants, from marketing, from PR, from HR. They come in, we set them up, look at the resource in Shenzhen to do exactly what their company does. For 2 weeks, they come up with implementable ideas, going back and actually starting to carry this through their own organization, because now they have the confidence knowing that could happen, and this is actually solving a problem they have either on the ground or on their job. This is the kind of show win we can deliver.
I will. I think in 1 hour I will have a presentation on our short wins, so I will not elaborate on this. But I will. I will just say that I think 1 hour ago, Dastan Davletovich told us about the initiative government as platform, and you should understand that that was done during 2 months, and I think this is a good short win. First of all. Second of all, I'm going to talk about several initiatives that were done during, I think, half a year or 1 year. This is, for example, the maternity leave social benefit was done by, in the Kyrgyz Republic, it was done, I think, during half a year. So the digitalization and everything. So I think also the third example would be we connected the state procurement portal with the state, with the tax service and with the social fund. And now some certificates can be given like very quickly. That was also very quickly done. So some of the initiatives may be done very quickly, and having said about time and patience, we should pay, of course, attention to some quick wins. And this will show, of course, to the state agencies and to people that everything can be done if there is political will.
Yeah, maybe we open the floor for some questions, and then, of course, our panelists are free to add to that. Are there anybody awake out there still after lunch? You know, I am a professor. I will start picking on people if they don't ask questions. So, all right, Hamid.
I'm a faculty member at the UCA, and I mean, I'm trying to implement educational technology there, but the human element still we need to convince people that it's good, right? Then my other question is like, first question is how can we do it effectively, especially Ravi and UNAKU. My second question is what's the saturation point? Can you now, as of today, visualize a saturation point in this digital transformation, or it will keep on going? Thank you.
So I can maybe make a couple of comments in terms of how to convince people to use the technologies you roll out. Our experience has been what we have done is we have always leveraged things on a small scale initially because the scale at Michigan is massive if I decide to do it university-wide. So whether it's working with a small unit or a small college and so on, and leveraging them and getting some faculty champions who adapt it and are then willing to talk about it. When, as you know yourself, you're a faculty member, faculty members like to hear about what's working for them and what's not working for them from other faculty colleagues. Sometimes that's very, very powerful. The other thing I want to urge people to think about is you're not going to be able to convince everyone of everything all the time, as we know. Sometimes there are people who just don't enjoy necessarily using technology, or sometimes are just opposed to it because it's your idea. I like to call these people cave people. Cave, I don't mean going and sitting in a cave. Cave stands for colleagues against virtually everything. So there are going to be some colleagues like that. So you should spend less energy on them and move on and work with the champions. And I'm happy to add more, but I want to give an opportunity to others to contribute. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little similar. Are there any doctors in the house? Okay. So with the medical profession, it's a little bit like dealing with a multi-headed hydra. And they all, once you think you've got one group under control, the others all run away. So you end up herding cats, if you understand the expression. So once again, to the point, not everyone is going to be engaged. Not everybody sees something as the way forward. But you're trying to get consensus. And it's a little bit like it's the not invented here syndrome. So we deal with it in, we're trying to do something in one hospital in, say, Nairobi. We're trying to convince the Karachi people this is the right or best practice. Well, it wasn't invented in Karachi, so it's never going to work. But if I go to Karachi with the best practice and say, this is the best practice, and they go, oh, that's really good. And I don't tell them it's being done in Nairobi. They go, oh, that's really, we'll take that. So it's really about, I come back to the soft skills on how you've got to consult and listen and engage. And then, I probably, for those who are the resistors or the cave people, I probably have a slightly different approach. I keep them really close to me. Right? So I use my friends are close, my enemies are closer, because that way I can understand their thinking and I can help them to see. Some of them will never cross over the line, but they'll be the late arrivers and they'll be brought forward by the rest of their group. And I'm sure the academic world is the same. There's a lot of people who go, no, we don't need to do that. I don't agree with that. You've just got to understand the group. You've got to understand the dynamics, the personalities. You've literally got, they're all stakeholders. You need a plan for each one of them, and then you need to take that forward. I've even had to work with one group where we were trying to do something, and there was one resistor who wanted to go a completely different path. So we gave him some money to go off and research an alternate solution. We said, go away, come back in 6 months and tell us what you think. While he was doing that, we were over here driving forward quickly. So when he came back, it was too late. We'd already progressed. So that was a strategy we used, was to, you go and investigate, but we're going to keep moving.
Great. Other questions? Yes.
My name is Abdul Hasib. I run an IT company. The question is that David was focusing on the importance of being entrepreneurial for innovation and how entrepreneurship can lead to technological innovation as well. While Russell was mentioned and highlighted that the vision that a company or an organization or a country requires, and then that vision can lead to a certain place in future. Now the question is that usually organizations, they have a certain vision, then they set certain goals, strategic initiatives, etc. how does entrepreneurship can coexist with this in an organization? Can both coexist? Can we have a balance for both in an organization? Vision and strategic objective, is there a room for this?
If I understood the question correctly, then I should say that in most of the countries, the digitalization is driven by the business, and Kyrgyzstan, I can talk about Kyrgyzstan. Digitalization here is also driven not only by the government of the Kyrgyz Republic, but also by the business structures, by entrepreneurship. And therefore, this platform, government as platform, and therefore we are very interested in communicating with the business structures. For example, right now we are, from the very beginning we thought, and that was what our idea, was our inspiration, to connect not only the state agencies but also business companies, because these are the entrepreneurs who are actually, the entrepreneurs are our citizens, right? So that they are the benefit consumers of digitalization. What we have done, do you remember I told you that technology is not the only thing that we are implementing. We are making also the business re-engineering of business processes. And right now we are Слышно? And other state agencies will take the information via Tunduk from National Statistical Committee. So what I'm saying is that by implementing the technology, we can re-engineer business processes. And this is what actually business told us. Please not only implement technology, but please think about ourselves. We should do digitalization in order to improve the business climate.
So, just going back to the question, entrepreneurship. So what we've done is we've actually put innovation and entrepreneurship as sort of frontline things, besides building a world-class ICT service delivery organisation. Innovation, entrepreneurship within that team, driven by transformation. So we use our transformation office to drive with the organisation how it needs to change. So if it's doing service design or it's got services there, how do we change the service? And it might be technology, it might not. It might be the way the workforce operates, right? It may be multi-skilling. So we're doing that type of stuff. And then we're also looking at, we've got other people who are looking at different types of technologies and maybe creating some technology in intellectual property and going, how can we apply that to do further improvement? So we're just not sitting there looking, it's about driving innovation. And innovation is existing systems and bringing new functionality and also, but you can also innovate by saying, this is a really good idea. And with a lot of what we're trying to do is a core is here, and we innovate on the edge, because that's really where you get to play, and you've left the core as a standard, which allows us to drive forward standardization.
It's working again. Do we have one or two quick questions here? Neil, and then go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's easy. So no, I think that's a great question, and actually, higher education can empower innovation. It already does, but it can continue to empower innovation. And having in a higher education system an ecosystem that encourages innovation is very, very critical. For example, last year from Michigan, there were 21 startups just in 1 year. Last year, 21 startups, and this year they're on pace to launch 23 more startups. And that innovation is coming from students, faculty, staff, others. It's not limited. Entrepreneurship is about noticing a problem, a pain point, and applying skills that you have or skills that a team has, making sure that our communication skills are critical as well, and applying them. So I think having that mindset of focusing on emerging technologies, making sure that you're getting quick wins, because even venture capitalists have a limited time span in how long they're willing to wait in terms of getting their investment back. So all these things are critical.
Be interested in the China experience on that.
Well, my city is actually exactly the opposite to that. Until 2017, in 2017, Shenzhen doubled the number of a higher education institute from 1 to 2. We are a city of 15 million people, and we had 1 university. Now we have 2. It's really, if you look at the long span, higher education institute come out of the very active, highly innovative, driven ecosystem of entrepreneurship. University of Michigan coming out of the auto industry. Berkeley, Stanford coming out of the semiconductor industry. It's not, they didn't make the place make them. I think that's important in terms of a lot of this, but later on, when the system is starting to become mature, they are more getting driven, they have more resource to invest into the cutting edge stuff, to invest into the higher education research. But in the beginning, it's actually entrepreneurship driving the quality of education rather than education driving the state of entrepreneurship.
So the observation was we've not mentioned a consumer or a customer. And the follow-up is, if we look at what's happening in the world, look at my children, I look at my customers, it's more about personalization, my device, my time, So is this digitalization really a customer pull, customer demand, or is it somebody trying to push? And that was the question.
Well, I don't agree that we didn't talk about customers, because we, at least I talked about citizens who are our customers. And when we think about digitalization, first of all, we think about citizens, about public services. When we think about public services, first of all, we think about our citizens, our people who are in the center. Therefore, we call our platform centric, citizen-centric approach. I think that this is actually the push from the citizens first, from entrepreneurs, I say, from business structures, but also, we say government, meaning the institution, but government also work the citizens, who also want to have better approach to the same kind of services, like, for example, getting the passports or going to the hospitals and having better services. So I think that this is a push from not only from citizens, but also citizens sitting in the government, different layers of governments, right? Pushes.
Well, we've come to the end of our session, and I'd like to acknowledge here David, Nuriia, Russel, and Ravi. I think they deserve a great round of applause. Thank you very much.